This is BKL Nightly. I'm Thad Brown along with Caleb Carr, Rachel Librett, Full House in today. We are going to go through, pick through the remains of free agency and find some treasures, some guys the Bills should be targeting between now and the start of the NFL draft. But first, we do have some news today. The Bills did sign 3 players on Thursday, and it was a unique group to a degree. Some guys that raise a little bit of an eyebrow. 2 offensive linemen, Austin Corbett and Lloyd Cushenberry, along with wide receiver Trent Sherfield, who Bills fans are certainly familiar with. Let me go around the room quick. These are not high-level season-altering guys, but guys that very much could be involved in the season. Caleb, you can go first. Just quick reaction to the Bills signing these 3 players.
Sherfield, no offense to him, but doesn't really mean much. That to me, that's just another guy that's going to be battling for a roster spot come training camp. I do like Cushenberry though. I think that's a good piece to just add some depth. He's not obviously. I don't think he's going to be fighting for a starting job, but just to continue to add some depth to the offensive line. Offensive line has been one of the brightest spots consistently over the last few years for the Bills. So it's just continue to add decent pieces to be there in case one of the top guys goes down. I think is very good.
I'm with you. I think Cushenberry is probably the furthest up on the list for me of additions. I'm kind of confused about wide receiver. I don't really understand. I mean, I'm more of I don't think they need another free agent wide receiver. I'd rather them do it in the draft, but if that's the guy they want to get, that's fine. I don't think same thing as Caleb said, he's going to be kind of fighting for a spot, so I don't think this is a, altering move for the wide receiver room. So I'm kind of confused about it, but I think just depth is the overall general takeaway from all of this.
For sure, and that's necessary, and the Bills needed a number of guys just to go to training camp. You got to find 90 to go to camp with, so you got to sign guys somewhere. I think Sherfield will be – he's a guy that if you strike out in the draft or if something disastrous happens to your receiving core between now and September – Sherfield's a guy who can play and handle things. He's also a guy who can contribute on special teams, so I wouldn't put it past him earning a roster spot that way. Corbett, to me, feels like the obvious, Alec Anderson's our guy, but in case he's not our guy, we got this other guy who can do it. The one that's the most curious to me is Cushenberry because of how good a player he is. He's not a bad player.
Yeah.
But he's only ever played center. I actually looked this up. He's never, most offensive linemen at some point, you play something else. He literally 100% of his snaps in the NFL have been at center. Well, Connor McGovern plays center. So what I think the play is there is, A, you are adding some interior offensive line depth because Cedric Van Granger has been in Buffalo for a couple of years, and they may have a handle on what kind of replacement he could be. But I think mainly what Brandon Beane is doing is he's buying a draft pick. Because if everybody stays healthy and you got Connor McGovern and Cushenberry and Van Granger, you probably don't need all 3 on a roster. But somebody else is probably hurt. So now you can say, hey, I got Lloyd Cushenberry. That 4th-round pick you have looks mighty nice to me right about now.
That's a good point.
I think this is the play on top of, again, just being smart and making sure you're not going to be in a bad spot come August.
I was surprised that the Bills, a not center-needy team, went for one of the top centers in free agency, outside of Tyler Lindenbaum, obviously.
For sure. And it is a head-scratcher no matter how you spin it.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the most logical way to go about it. And Brandon Beane, over the years, has been one of the best when it comes to leveraging draft picks out of teams at the end of training camp. So I think that is very much the play. Okay, let's get into the theme for today. And again, the point is, it feels like free agency is kind of done because very little has happened today, not as an exception. But the Bills still have needs all over the roster, and there are still guys out there. They're going to be free agent additions up until the draft, after the draft. I mean, even Brandon Cooks last year was a November ad. So we're far from done. So we wanted to go through the guys who are available and come up with suggestions on our own here about who we think the Bills should sign. And for everybody at home, we have not told each other who we have today. So these are going to be authentic reactions to everybody's suggestions. When you have a suggestion, you have to make a case why this guy works. The only hard and fast rule we had is it's got to be somebody that'll logically fit under the current salary cap conditions the Bills have. So, Caleb, you, by the sake of me just assigning you number 1, you get to go first here with your first guy.
All right. I wanted to address the linebacker position, and I think one of the biggest names left out there is from played with the Colts last year, Jermaine Pratt. He played 12 games with the Colts last year. He started the season with the Raiders, and then they cut him for not really sure why, but then he played really well with the Colts. He had 126 total tackles with both teams, so for the entire season, 10 pass deflections, threw an interception in there, and he's just been really consistent over the past few seasons. 3 straight 100 tackle seasons, which, by the way, the Bills didn't have a 100 tackle player on the defense last year, so that could bring in some help. I like a guy. I know you're a big fan of a Dorian Williams, and I do like him, but I think that he is where it kind of just stops, and there's not a ton of great options behind him. So I do think that linebacker is a place where some depth and some, I'm not going to call Pratt a star, but like some power there is necessary. And I just don't know if you're going to find that in the draft. I don't think the Bills are going to be able to get a good enough linebacker in round 1, or if they're going to want to spend their first round pick on a linebacker. And I don't think getting a guy later in the draft is going to really do much for you other than just add someone to compete with Joe Andreessen. Like, it's other than that, it's not really going to do much. Salary cap wise, I think what they have right now, he would take up a good chunk of it. But obviously there's still an ability to move some money around if you absolutely need to. He is probably one of the more unlikely ones that I'm going to say, because of the cap wise. But I think if you can find a way to maybe trim his salary down a little bit or get him to settle, he could be a nice addition.
Pratt was on my short list. This is a guy I like. Inside linebacker that brings some size. He goes 250, so you think about the Bills' last couple of years have been small, fast guys who play linebacker. 3-4, you need something generally a little on the bigger side, and Pratt would definitely offer that. So I'm a big fan of this move. I do think that the Bills could get him maybe a little cheaper than you're thinking now.
Yeah, that was kind of, I think a lot of what I was seeing was like 11 to 12 million, but I feel like you could get him for a lot cheaper than that, especially if he's hanging out for a few more weeks. If it's after the draft and he's still hanging out, I think you could get him for a lot less.
I think the release too from the Raiders was I didn't go dive too deep into it, but I think it was kind of just a headspace was wrong, didn't feel right kind of thing. So I'm not concerned about that.
No, I'm not
He's
either.
only never missed more than 2 games in a season.
No, that's another point that I was going to bring up is, knock on wood, not much of an injury history. So that's why he is getting a little bit older. I think he's 29 years old, so he's a little bit older, but not much of an injury history yet. So, I mean, until he shows you that he's got injury problems, you've got to assume that he doesn't.
Rachel, what's your take on Mr. Pratt here?
I like this. Mine too was linebacker, which will be teasing my pick in a few minutes here.
Okay.
But I'm glad that you went with this one because he was also on my list. But I think this is a good, money-wise, I think it fits into the scheme. I also think, being healthy is a big part of it too. And I think just as a depth piece, this is a good one. I like this one.
A starter every year since second year too. He's never been a backup. And PFF liked him pretty much last year too.
And I think he could be a starter on this team. I think you'd have to, I don't think it'd be a 100% guarantee right as soon as you sign him, but I do think he definitely has the ability to be a starter.
Okay, Rachel's up next.
So I was thinking more of we're spoiling it. I was going to give my intro.
I'm sorry. I hit the button too fast.
I was going to give my intro here because I got to defend some things before.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, like people
is this guy?
at home have not seen
we haven't
the name
seen his
yet.
last name yet. Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking more of linebacker was initially what came into my head. I was thinking more of the outside linebacker edge rusher type. And that's why I went with Jadeveon Clowney. Now, I understand he's 33 years old. I understand that he is not in his prime. However, I think he would fit really well into this 3-4 Jim Leonard defense. And yes, he's played for 4 different teams in the last 4 years, but last year he recorded 8.5 sacks. So he's still, he's 33 years old. I think I was listening or looking at some of his highlights, and whoever was like calling one of their games, I think last year, was like, he's 32, but he plays like he's 22. So he's still capable. I think with the 8.5 sacks last year, that's more than I think anybody on the Bills had. I think Greg Rousseau had 8. Like I said, this isn't, with who's out there right now, no one is this star that's going to come, but I do like him just because I think he has been a star. I mean, he was the first overall pick, so that counts for something. Sure. And I think his money-wise, he fits into, I think, what the Bills can accomplish there. So I think it would be he's an older guy. I get it. I know Caleb was like, oh, my guy's 29. That's kind of old. We're adding 4 years here. I understand. But I just think he would fit well into the scheme of that outside linebacker edge edge rusher type, I think would be a good fit.
Jadeveon Clowney's 33. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's up there because he was a name that I was considering as well, and then that 33 just made me like, I'll put him down a little bit. But I do like this one as well.
I'm a fan of this. I was not thinking about him at all. I kind of stayed away from edge in general because I feel like the Bills have already committed an asset there, and I like the edges in the draft. But this does make a lot of sense. I like the idea of an athlete. He can certainly play the outside linebacker type position in a 3-4. The age is certainly a concern. But if you're a defense that's going to like create chaos, if that's who you're going to be, man, give me Jadeveon Clowney to stick in the middle of that thing. So I do like this idea, quite a bit, even if I spoiled it for you. I apologize.
That's
that
okay.
was
I just
totally
want to give my
my bad.
disclaimer of, yes, he's 33. Yes, he's played for 4 different teams. But here's my pick. But that's okay. We got there.
All right, speaking of linebacker, I'm going to go there too. I'm going to go with Bobby Okereke from the Giants. This is a guy that I've been looking at for a while in terms of a possible Bills fit. Now, inside linebacker, a little smaller than Jermaine Pratt, but everything else is very similar to Pratt. He's about 30 years old, 6'2", 235, so still on the bigger side, 15 pounds heavier than Bernard is. So we're still getting bigger, which is something I think you're going to need to have with an inside linebacker. Dependable also, he's missed 5 games total in 5 years. 3 of the last 5 years, he's played all 17, 150 tackles per year in general when he's been healthy. He is a Giants most recently of the Giants, and the Bills' new inside linebacker coach is John Agorogu, who was the inside linebacker coach for the Giants. So there's a connection there already. The concern with Okereke, in terms of him being available to the Bills, is that his market projection was right at the top of the linebacker list. He was $12 million or so. But the longer these guys are available, the more likely it is that they will be cheaper and more amenable to what the Bills have to offer. So I don't know if we're there yet with Okereke. And, with a guy like Pratt out there, maybe they don't even bother with Okereke. But in terms of a linebacker, separate of the financial stuff, that checks every box, Okereke is check mark after check mark after check mark of a starter, of a linebacker you can depend on as a starter.
This is another guy that I was thinking about, but I think the money aspect just kind of drove me away a little bit. I'm really surprised that he's even available for us to be having this conversation about him. From the beginning of free agency, he was one of those guys that I was expecting to go fairly soon. Like once I learned that he wasn't going to be, that he was a free agent this year, I was like, oh yeah, he's going to get picked up by somebody. He's going to continue his career somewhere, and he's going to be pretty good. I've always seen him as not one of the top linebackers in the league, obviously, but one of the better ones, definitely. I'd love to see him in a Bills uniform, but with the Bills cap space, I still, even though he hasn't gotten picked up yet, I still feel like whatever the Bills offer him, there's probably a team out there that wants him a little bit more and is willing to pay, has a little bit more money to pay for him. Now, again, he still hasn't gotten picked up, so who knows? Maybe the interest isn't out there like we think, but I definitely wouldn't mind seeing him in a Bills uniform next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. The main reason I left him off was the money. I think if you're taking that aspect out of it, he's for sure number one in that linebacker or the linebackers that are available. I just think, same thing that Caleb said, I think another team is going to be able to give him more than what the Bills can right now, so that's kind of why I steered clear from him, but I do think this would be, if the money wasn't an issue, this would be a good pickup for the Bills.
The fact that we start the show with 2 out of 3 linebackers, and more or less 3 out of 3, although Clowney's a different position, I think does underscore the need the Bills have at linebacker. You talk about like Pratt maybe being able to step in, not right away. I think whoever they sign, you pencil that guy in as the starter.
Probably.
Look, they could go there are guys going to be available in the draft, but I like the wide receiver class, the edge class, even the interior defensive line class better than the linebacker class. So if I want to fill something now, I think I'd rather get a starter at linebacker, so I'm not worried about that going into the end of April.
Especially towards the top of that draft class, I think like where the Bills are at the end of round 1, there's going to be plenty of receivers or edge rushers available that you're not going to want to, I'm not going to say waste, but like you're not going to want to use your pick on a linebacker when you have all these other stars up there.
Assuming the draft doesn't go some wacky way that
which it definitely could.
Prevents that from happening. All right, Caleb, we are back around to you.
All right. Second pick. I don't think anyone was going to sniff this guy. You mentioned his name earlier in the show. Rachel mentioned how she was going to stay away from wide receivers. Is that what you said?
I did.
I think that going wide receiver in the draft is probably the best option. for the wide receiver room. But I do think that edge rusher is probably a better option in that first round. And then when you get to the third round and the fourth and the fifth, this isn't a guy, you can't draft a guy that you can automatically just like pencil in as. We just talked about how Pratt you can pencil in as a starter. You can't just put him in as the 3 guy just right away. I don't have a ton of trust in Joshua Palmer because we didn't see a ton from him last year. I don't have a ton of trust in Keon Coleman, for obvious reasons.
Right.
So I feel like they probably need to bring in another guy. And why not just bring in a guy that was already there? Bring back Brandon Cooks. I want Cooks back in Buffalo. He came in late in the season. You mentioned earlier how he was a November signing, and right away he kind of was a little bit of spark for the offense. Obviously, he didn't completely change the team, but I don't think that's what you ever expected him to do, and that's definitely not what you would expect him to do this upcoming season. You would expect him to come in as wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, but he adds that deep threat. I know that the addition of DJ Moore is kind of a little bit more downfield threat, but when you have a guy like Josh Allen, give him as many downfield options, as many deep threats as you possibly can. He's definitely going to be one of the cheaper wide receivers available. There's still, like, if you really wanted to, you could go get like a big name guy. You could bring back Stephon Diggs. You could try to bring in Tyreek Hill. Like, you could bring in some of these big name guys, but I don't think that's the direction that the Bills want to go, both player-wise and money-wise. So I think that Brandon Cooks, he's a veteran. Also, let him redeem himself. You don't want the last.
And there's where the truth comes out.
You know what? That was part of the pick. Is I really like Brandon Cooks as a player, and I think he deserves a chance to prove that he's better than that in a Bills uniform than the drop / catch / whatever you want to call it against the Broncos.
I really like Brandon Cooks. Even looking at, like, I knew I was going to stay away from receivers, but even looking at the list of who was available, Brandon Cooks is one that I think is a good pickup. And for all of the reasons that you gave, I mean, maybe redemption is part of it. You said he didn't change a season, but he kind of did change a season. He kind of
did. I'm just
not
saying
in the way you
this,
wanted him to. Yeah.
well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, I do like Cooks, and if he were to be brought back, I wouldn't be like, oh, dang, they brought back Cooks, like that's a waste. Like I think I'd be happy with that too.
Up until they signed Trent Sherfield, I thought they still needed a low-level receiver just to kind of fill out the room before going to the draft. Because I agree with you. You want to get your next receiver, your next impact receiver in the draft.
Yeah.
That's where you're most likely to hit on something big. There's no doubt Cooks was a spark last year. I do have an issue with the number of times he would double catch balls, which is what eventually burned them in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, the interception, he has it, and he doesn't have it. The debate you have about Cooks versus Palmer, in other words, he could be the number 3 receiver, is a weird one because I look at the two guys, and Josh Palmer should be a better player right now. He's younger,
he should
bigger,
be.
right.
But just based off last season,
he was not.
And then on top of it, I mean, you give Brandon Cooks an entire offseason with this team, like a whole training camp and actual
where he
time
gets a year older also.
Whatever. I know, but I don't love the age thing. But I do think that he showed last year that he still has an ability to play.
I'm not against Cooks in general. I think I'm more against it now that the Sherfield's in-house.
Yeah, the Sherfield makes it a little bit difficult, but I still just don't see Sherfield as a guy that's fighting for the 3rd or 4th spot. Right. I see him as a guy that's fighting for a job. Yeah. And to me, that and Brandon Cooks are just not in the same bucket.
If Brandon Cooks is beating out Josh Palmer for the 3rd job, then I think you've lost. You know, I just don't think, even if that might happen.
That's a good point.
I think that you need to be better than that. And if Cooks is going to win over Palmer, then you probably haven't done your job in the offseason in terms of what you want to do for this team at receiver. So that's why I'm kind of not.
That is a good point. My other kind of thought was I think they still need to draft a receiver, even if it's not in the first round.
Totally
I think
agree.
you still need to bring in a receiver. But bringing a guy like Brandon Cooks, because I do think, I agree with you that, like, if Cooks is beating out Palmer and Cooks is your 3 guy, then it's not a great option. But I think that if Cooks is beating out Palmer and you still got a rookie that's right there in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 spot, I feel a lot better about that.
For sure. Rach, you're up next.
I'm going to stay with the theme of bringing back somebody that the Bills have had before, but I'm going to go with the corner. I think corner needs some depth there. I mean, really, we're assuming it's Hairston and Benford are the two, and Hairston is basically a rookie all over again in my eyes. So I went with bringing back Rasul Douglas from Miami, and I know this is
this is good. This is
an interesting one.
This might
be. I know. I mean, to me, I don't know if Rasul Douglas would want to come back to the Bills, but and be in that role of maybe not being the guy if Harrison's one of the guys. But this is a move that I wouldn't break the bank for the Bills.
For sure.
Obviously knows what the secondary is. He knows a lot of the guys that are still in the secondary. He was successful with Miami last year. I mean, relatively. So he's 31. That does kind of factor into it as well. But I just think as far as who's out there, maybe a cheaper get for the Bills, and this is a guy that's been in the system. That's why I went with him.
I don't think it's a terrible idea because the pickings is slim at corner in terms of finding a depth guy that works. And I have a guy that's on my short list that we will not talk about. Maybe we have a little extra time. We will. But Douglas isn't the worst idea in the world, especially for a guy that's known as a ball hawk, a turnover creator. Again, this is what this defense wants to be. So he would fit into that. So I don't think it would happen.
Yeah, I don't see this as particularly being realistic. But I think if you kind of just look at just the factors that go into it, it'd be like, okay, this is an option.
Yes,
you know?
I'm with you there.
Douglas was definitely one of the names I was considering, but even outside of him, just like bringing in an older,
the Bills
veteran-ish
do that too.
cornerback.
Bring guys back.
They do really like to bring guys back. And I like when they bring guys back.
Now, keep in mind, that's the McDermott Bills. You know,
that is the McDermott Bills.
Different era now.
You're right. I think the Bills just need to target cornerback. Picking up another cornerback in this free agency because of the fact that, like Rachel said, they're so young there. Like, even outside of Maxwell Hairston, there's a lot of second, third year guys in that room. And that puts a lot of pressure in my eyes on Christian Benford to be like, I think the Bills are already putting pressure on him to be a leader in that room and to be the best player in that room. But to just be him and then a whole bunch of inexperienced guys puts a lot of pressure, not only on him, but the rest of the secondary. Like these new guys that you brought in at safety position, Cole Bishop, even just the linebacker core, like that just puts a lot of pressure on the rest of this defense. And I think having a guy like Rasul Douglas, or even just a veteran that's proven himself in this league, will be big in the growth of those younger guys.
So I agree that the Bills need a corner. And like I said, I had a different name. We're going to have a little time here, so I'll throw two names at you quick.
Okay.
So here's the name that I had at corner instead of Rasul Douglas, coming up on your screen right now. What do you think of that?
I thought about it, and then I remembered, and I thought about it, and then I actually thought about it, and then I didn't like it.
No, that was kind of my.
Trayvon
I saw
Diggs,
the name
for
and
not
I was
watching,
like,
by the way. Trayvon Diggs, who we're talking about. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I saw the name and the available people, and then I was like, maybe, and then I was like, no.
And then I was like, nah.
Okay, what's the?
So all right, look. The problem at corner is that the Bills don't need a starter. They need somebody who's going to be a backup.
Yeah.
But the guys who are available.
Well, hopefully.
Exactly. Right. The guys who are available are probably not guys that are going to want to be backups. It's like L'Jarius Sneed, Marshawn Lattimore, and Trayvon Diggs. And then after that, you jump right off a cliff to Rasul Douglas and Trey White and who, you know.
Hey, don't diss Trey White.
No, look, I like Trey White, but like it feels like there are two groups of corners that are available right now. Either guys who won't be a backup or guys that you don't want to be your backup. So how do you bridge the gap? Rasul Douglas isn't a terrible idea because he might be a better one of the second group. Trayvon Diggs, to me, is a guy that you're most likely to get to take a backup level job, I think. Doesn't mean he will, but most likely to. And again, I'll harp on it. This is supposed to be an attacking, turnover-creating defense. Trayvon Diggs is your guy for that. 20 interceptions. He's got like 16 touchdowns or something. He's got more touchdowns than Bills receivers lately. So this is a guy that would, I think, fit into the theme of the defense, even if I'm just as shaky as you guys are about, does it work? Can he play at all? Do you want him on the team? But you need somebody, and this to me is a reasonable option.
Listen, I do not know Trayvon Diggs. I've never met him before. I've never had a conversation with him. But just based off of his media presence and kind of going from the Cowboys and being on this high with the Cowboys and then going down a little bit and then going over to the Packers, he seems like a guy that if you brought in and you said, hey, it's going to be Christian Benford, Maxwell Hairston, then you, he seems like the kind of guys that's like, nah, I'm fighting. I'm getting that second job. And honestly, I want that from a backup. I want a guy that's going to be like, no, I want to get that starting job. Not a guy that's just like, oh yeah, I'm a backup cornerback and that's okay. I'm good here.
I think they all want to get the starting
yes,
job. I know what you're saying.
He gives me this vibe that's like, no, I'm a starter.
How old is he now?
29. That's another thing
Is
too.
he really?
Yeah. Might be
Wow.
28. I didn't write it down.
I would have guessed 27, but that's probably wrong.
See if I have the internet handy here. Again, I'm not in love with this idea, but
I don't hate it.
I
think that's where I land.
How much does he cost?
He's projected. Well, look, he's projected to be, like 7-8 million.
Okay.
But if you're gonna sign him to be a backup, then you're doing it down the road when he's probably coming in cheaper.
Yeah.
He's gonna be 29 end of this year.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
So
that's not terrible.
The real third one that this is not the one that I was more a priority of is actually this guy, because we haven't really talked about defensive line, at least interior. DJ Reader, nose tackle, big man. He's close to 32 years old, but dependable, knows how to stop the run. I think even a defensive lineman, when they get deeper into your 30s, you can still play, because largely all you have to do is be big and not be moved. And DJ Reader can be that. I think he's only going to cost you maybe $3 million, so certainly fits into the budget the Bills have right now. I think there are more options than this that you can convince me would work for this idea of being a run-stopping first and second down player. The other thing it does too is Deion Walker, who also is your other big guy. We've seen that he can be probably more than just a big guy. He can be a pass rusher. So this would free him up to be able to be used on more passing downs than, just locking him into the first and second down. So I do think you need somebody to take that off of Deion Walker, and DJ Reader would do that for sure.
I don't know much about DJ Reader, but I like the point that you make of taking it off of Deion Walker, because we've talked a lot about he's kind of, not that there's pressure for him to have this bigger role, but there is, like, he's kind of got to do it. So I like this. How old did you say he was?
30. He's going to be 32 soon. Yeah.
So yeah, I like this to add some veteran depth. I think is probably what the Bills, if they're going to pick up someone in the interior, then this would probably be the type of guy you'd be looking for.
This is another name that I definitely considered. He's been in the news a little bit. News makes it sound bad. His name's been getting thrown around a little bit. He's been visiting with some teams.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the top defensive guys, at least, still available out there. I don't think he's going to be available for much longer. Like this, we talk about the rest of these guys. These are guys that, like, they might be available up to the draft. They might even be available after the draft, and maybe they're going to be cheaper. I think that he's going to be a guy that's gone within the next week. But because of that, I don't think the Bills are going to be able to get him, because there's going to be so many other teams that are pushing for him. But I do agree that he would be a really good piece.
Anybody? Now, we all came in with some extras. Do you guys have, among the extras you have, anybody you want me to throw out or has not been mentioned real quick?
You can throw up mine real quick, because it's the same position as what you did, media.
Number 3, here we go.
Yep.
Greg Gaines. Yeah,
Greg
I looked
Gaines,
at him. Yep.
Tampa Bay. He's a little bit younger, 29 years old.
Yeah.
He's played the 3-4 defense in Tampa these past few years. He's not really a star. He never really emerged as this crazy guy. And he doesn't play a whole ton. I think last season he only played 36% of the defensive snaps for the team. But 23 tackles, a couple sacks in there, some tackles for loss. He's a run stopper, just like Reader is. I think he'd be a little bit cheaper, a little bit younger. Like we said, Reader's one of the top guys. I think this is one of those guys that if you can't get a guy like Reader, he's kind of in that next bucket.
Yeah, I think with free agency right now, you're stuck with two types of guys: older guys who have produced, or younger guys who have not produced.
Yeah.
And Gaines is in the second category. Rach, is your third guy? Has he been mentioned yet or no?
He hasn't. I was looking at offensive linemen, but now with the Bills pickups this afternoon,
this makes
I'm
sense,
like,
but yeah.
we don't have to. But I was just looking at him. I mean, he's been in the league for what feels like forever. Just a guy to add some depth on a guard. So that was really it. But now I'm kind of,
Yeah, Kevin Zeitler was a smart call 2 hours ago.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I did enjoy, by the way, the reveal nature of the show today. It was like the end of Family Feud. We're like, what was number 5? Yeah. Ding, Kevin Zeitler. So that was fun. Real quick, we got a minute here.
Yep.
Position priority. Of all the guys we talked about and all the arguments we all made, just quick around the room. Rach, you go first. If you wanted to go one position, next move for the Bills, what would it be? Or maybe most spend for the Bills?
Probably linebacker. I think we were kind of all on the same page with that. It's just when the fact that we were all on the same page shows how much of an issue it is. I think there's just not enough key pieces right now. They definitely need to add something in there.
I think my just like in a bubble thought is wide receiver or edge rusher, but because of what we've talked about so much about the number of options there are at linebacker in free agency and the limited number in the draft, I think free agency wise, it has to be linebacker.
The most important thing for me is fill these holes so the Bills can go and get the edges and receivers in the draft that could be absolute franchise changers. Whereas linebackers, even if you get a great one, probably is not going to end up being that. That's going to do it for this edition of BKL Nightly. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, you can always find this show on YouTube and on Spotify. We're back again on Monday. For Rachel and Caleb, I'm Thad. We'll see you then.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.